host, Karla Nivens. Welcome to the Every Heart, Every Woman show. My name is Karla Nivens. I am your host. Our show is a program of Love Ministries, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can find out all of the information about Love Ministries and everything that's going on with the nonprofit as you go to their website. Go to loveministriesbuilds.org. Also check out my website, karlanivens.com. I have so many things on there and changing and adding new avenues on karlanivens.com every day. Well, I am so excited to welcome back to the Every Heart, Every Woman show for the second time, Rebecca Dwight Brook. Rebecca is the author of the award-winning debut novel, Trouble the Water, published in June 2019, and the nonfiction book, Loving the World with God, published in 2014. Rebecca earned her bachelor's degree in education at Texas A&M University and a master and doctorate degrees in theology, both from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. In 2017, Rebecca was a scholarship recipient for the prestigious Key West Literary Seminar. She volunteers at the Pat Conroy Literary Center in Beaufort, South Carolina, which she is now. She published a nonfiction play. She published nonfiction plays A Little Tennis, I love that, Travels When She Can, and Loves Life in the Low Country with her husband. And her exuberant golden retriever, which we just saw right before we started the show. And so hopefully her golden retriever will poke back up and give us a hello here. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being on the show again, and welcome back.
Karla, thank you. It's great to see you again. And we probably will see my silly dog before we're finished. But it's delightful to be with you this morning. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. We appreciate your time. And I'm always following you on social media and keeping up with the new things that you have going on. And I know, actually, I noticed last year, the Christmas book, and I was kind of booked up for last year, and I thought I have to have a conversation about with Rebecca this year. So I'm so excited we were able to for our schedules to line up. Your book is called Stars of Wonder, a children's Christmas adventure. Right. Give us kind of the premise of the book.
So let me show you the cover for those that might want to go find it or take a look at it. It's beautifully illustrated by a woman named Jill Dubin. So it's a simple story. It's a reimagining of the Christmas story with 4 siblings, young kids who follow a star. And they have some adventures and some misadventures, and they learn from those things, and they discover their own courage and strength and wisdom and the love of their family, and they meet the baby, and all the challenges are resolved at the end of a few pages. But I love that it's a way to share the Christmas story with little ones. Mm-hmm. And it's illustrated in a way that makes it fun for a lap kid to sit and snuggle and read. And it has enough movement and interest for little bit older kids to read on their own as well. So it was a lot of fun to work on. It happened. I wasn't really planning to write a children's book or a Christmas book, but when the novel was with the publisher in the spring of 2019, before it was back in my hands, mm-hmm. I woke up one day and I just had this idea of, wouldn't it be fun to write something for my kids, for the grandkids, mm-hmm. That reminded them of how wonderful, brave, and smart they are. Mm-hmm. And that kind of triggered the Christmas story idea. And I played with it a little bit. And then the novel came out and I got busy with that and sort of left it alone. And then in March of 2020, when everything slowed down and we thought we were just going to have a little more time on our hands for a few weeks, mm-hmm. I pulled it back out and thought, well, this is a good time to kind of wrap that up.
Yeah.
And so I finished it, or mostly finished it, and I sent a copy of the manuscript to both sets of my kids, the grandparents of the children on whom I based the story. The characters in the story are named for my grandchildren.
Oh, nice.
Which was really, really fun.
Yeah.
So I sent an early manuscript to both sets of parents and said, read this with the kids. And if they think it's fun, then, we'll see what happens. And if they think it's dumb, I'll let it go. And they all had great response and input. But the most fun, I think, was my little granddaughter, Phoebe, who in the book is Princess Phoebe.
Oh.
Her dad videotaped her response, and she was maybe 8 at the time. And she stood up real straight and she put her little hands on her hips and she said, Nana, it needs a meteor shower. And she was absolutely right. It needed a meteor shower. I love it. So it has a meteor shower. But it was just delightful to really think very specifically of, children who I love and their families sharing a story like this.
Yes, yes. And, so I know that you are a minister and you served in churches for years and years and years, and you're still serving at a church now part-time. And I've worked mostly in music ministry in churches for forever, since I was born, seems like. When we get around Christmas, since we're in the business, it's hard to think of a new angle and something that will hit home. So that's why, number one of the reasons why I'm so impressed that your mind was able to think of this, the Christmas story, but in, kind of through the eyes of your grandchildren, and come up with this way that you can pull this out every single year and go back through the story with them and just, refresh their memories and to make sure that they are growing up in the faith and with the faith and understanding in a way they can understand. Right.
Exactly. And you're so right about that. I think, I've had a lot of conversations with other pastors and musicians. Christmas and Easter are such high holy moments in the life of the church, but they have very specific stories, and we tell those stories again and again and again, which is very important, but we're always looking for a way to make it new or fresh. And sometimes that's frustrating. And I think sometimes I forget, and little children help me remember that it is a new story for people as well as an old story. And not only with children, but there are adults among us for whom the story of Jesus is not well known or not known at all. And part of our privilege is to share that story and tell that story. So to be able to kind of think of it through the eyes of children, but also to imagine it, to kind of flesh out some of the details and imagine some things that might have happened along the way. The scriptural story is very brief about the Magi, but it was fun to sort of think, well, what was that journey like? And what did they encounter? And what were the obstacles? And then to place that in the lives of children.
Yeah. Wonderful. I love it. And, Rebecca, as I was getting ready for our conversation today, I started reading about all of the things that have been written about Stars of Wonder. And I came across this quote. I want to make sure that I say it right. It is true that fear and courage often happen together, which I thought that is so true for life, not only for children, most definitely, all the way up to, when you are working in your job and when you're in your 30s, mid 40s or whatever. And then also after you retire and you're living the good life, still those two things happen at the same time, fear and courage. So how is that quote brought to life in the book?
So in the story, these children they leave their families, their parents, to chase this star, and they sort of they talk about it, and they decide it's best if they don't tell their parents because they don't want their parents to worry. They discovered later that they might have thought differently about that, and that's all resolved later in the story. But early on in their journey, they stop at an oasis on their journey to spend the night, and after dark, some mountain lions come down from the hills and attack one of their camels. And these are little children. They're very protective of one another and of the camels. Right. And so they chase off the mountain lion. And then they talk about it afterwards and how they recognize the courage that they saw in each other. They name that for one another. They talk about how afraid they were and how brave they saw their siblings being. Yes. And the story, that scene came pretty naturally. It was not hard to imagine or to write. But afterwards, I sort of recognized that that's what happens in all of us, as you said, over and over throughout life. We encounter things that are frightening. We hopefully that courage rises in us to face the fear or the threat or the crisis. But we don't. It's in looking back at it. It's in retrospect that we see that the fear and the courage happened in a parallel moment. And hopefully, if we recognize that, we learn from it. Yeah. Yeah. So I hope that when children and families read this, that they have some of that conversation. Maybe ask one another, when were you afraid? When were you brave? How did those things happen in the same experience? Yeah. And isn't that kind of the joy of writing a children's book? Like you can, another thing that really comes through in the book is that there are, you've included all of these jewels, I call them, that we should add to our character and notice in our character, make sure they are there. Even the adults that read the book should think, okay, when have I been courageous? Like when have I stepped out on the will of God? When have I not retreated when I should, move forward? So I love it that there are so many jewels, in the book. Are there any more that you can share with us that we can look forward to? Well, I hope so. I hope that people find those kinds of things on every page. I do think that the power of a good story is that whatever age we are, as readers, we find ourselves thinking, what would I do? How would I respond to that? We kind of worry about subconsciously that happens. We wonder how this character is going to manage that, or how we would manage that if we were in the story. There's another point in the story where they get separated from one another. Okay. And so that's frightening, and they have to sort that out and make decisions about how they find one another again. They, on the way to find the baby, following the star, they meet a very cranky king, the Herod of the story, and they have to just determine how they want to respond or not respond to him. If they want to go back and tell him when they find this baby, or if they think maybe they don't want to do that. And so they're, the familiar story, but they're making decisions that for all of us, there's a first time for some of those decisions. Right. Or a pivotal moment for difficult decisions. Right. And so I hope that the story gives children and gives families a way to talk about, not in a heavy way, but in a storytelling way. Yes. How do we come to those hard points and listen, to one another, listen for God, and listen to our own hearts, and make the choices that are best for us. Yeah. That's you're right. We can share those things, and in a storytelling way, maybe, they'll sink in. I think. Well, I think your ministry of music, as we hear things, as we take them into our being, as we repeat, I think some of the old and new hymns are so special because they sort of seep into us. Yes. And I believe stories do that too. Stories
Well,
find their way into us, and then they teach us.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that came across, and this was in, like one of the reviews in the book, and just made me so happy that one review said this book has a similar quality to those wonderful classics such as J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I just love that. Like, I was like, what? Number one, go Rebecca. Like, isn't that very cool?
That was extremely cool. I think that was Dr. Leanne Hadley, who is just someone I've respected for years. In fact, Karla, she would make a wonderful guest on your program.
Okay,
she's a United Methodist pastor who's worked specifically with children and children in trauma, children's spirituality for a long, long time. She's just brilliant. She's one of my favorite people in terms of the work she does with kids. And so I sent her a copy of the book early on because she's the expert in children's spirituality.
Yes.
And when she responded with that kind of endorsement, wow, I'm no C.S. Lewis or Tolkien, but again, I think it goes to what we've talked about the way stories work and the way stories with children work and why they matter so much, and how what can be kind of a simple story can have an impact and can plant a seed, that can grow and that can be nourished and that can flourish.
Yeah.
And I hope that's what she was getting at. But yeah, a review like that is a great shot in the arm.
Really cool. So I just love that. I love reading that. So tell us, how can we get our hands on the book? How can we, and is there a way to order it directly from you?
Yeah, there's several possibilities there. So my website is RebeccaBruff.com.
Okay.
And that's, you can, it has a mechanism for ordering directly, and I can inscribe it to a child or a parent or whatever that way.
Wonderful.
And if people do that pretty quickly, they might get it before Christmas. I go to the post office a lot, a couple of weeks before Christmas.
Okay.
So that's certainly a possibility. It's available, of course, online with the big distributors like Amazon. I love when people support their local independent bookstores.
Yes.
That's really an important part of our communities. Interrobang had it last year in Dallas, and I think they still do. Not sure about Logos, but it can be ordered by any store. So if folks want to go into their own local bookstore, they can find it that way as well. Very
cool. And then the other thing I thought, especially with this being a children's book, are you, can people reach out to you for live readings, to have you come and
absolutely,
to read to the kids?
Absolutely. I love being with readers, with kids for the children's book, with adults for the novel. And I love the interaction and the connection that happens with that. So sure, they can contact me again through the website. That's the best way to be in touch. Yeah.
Very cool.
That's a lot of fun.
Rebecca, we are looking forward to whatever is next. I don't know if sometimes artists, we know what's coming up next, and sometimes we have several things that we've started and we don't know actually what's going to make it to the finish line next.
That's the world that I'm in right now. There are a few things sort of percolating and on the back burner, and we'll see what gets cooked up first.
Yes. Well, listen, continuing success. Come back to the Every Heart, Every Woman show as much as you want. And so we certainly love talking with you and catching up with you. Appreciate your time. And just, we want to bless you.
Thank you so much, Karla. You're a gift and you're a blessing.
Thank
you.
I
thank you for this time with you.
Thank you.
I really do.
Well,
all of that
everyone,
too.
my name is Karla Nivens. I am the host of the Every Heart, Every Woman show. You can check me out at karlanivens.com. Our show is a program of Love Ministries. Go to loveministriesbuilds.org for all of the great information about that nonprofit. Everyone have a great week, and we'll see you back here next week.